U.S. officials are confident the Ukrainian plane, which crashed in Iran during the missile strikes, was mistakenly shot down.
So here to expand on what we know now is Jamie Finch. He's former Director of Government, Public and Family Affairs for the NTSB. Great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to start with this video. This is from the New York Times that purports to be the moment when a missile hit that airplane as it was. I mean, you can just see it there. Just watching that video, what is your reaction to that, Jamie? And what do we know right now? What facts do we have about what actually happened?
Well, obviously, when you first see that video, you think, okay, well, this is obviously a missile and so forth.
Yes.
But even though we've had confirmation on these videos, et cetera, we still really need to get the investigators on the ground doing the investigation, and the sooner the better. It's my understanding from the reports that the Iranians are already bulldozing the site. There's people that are coming in and raiding the site as far as picking it through. I mean, it's really, in these situations, it's the best of humanity, and we also see the worst of humanity.
Yeah.
I mean,
so, Jamie, as a crash investigator yourself, what are the types? How do you confirm that something is shot down? What are the things that you're going to look for? Is it the crash pattern? Is it some of the pieces of the aircraft?
Right.
Just explain that to the audience.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to be looking at. Well, the investigators will be looking at the crash pattern and how the debris is spread along the debris field. They'll also be looking at satellite data. They'll be looking at radar data and also any kind of sound and impact studies that they can do as far as from the impact from satellites and picking up that information. And so there's a lot of that they'll be doing with that. But also then on the ground, they'll be doing residue studies of the materials and also of the remains, any kind of impact studies or impact points within the fuselage and also within the bodies themselves that have been recovered.
When you initially got the news of this crash, what were some of the questions that were raised in your mind? Because, look, I don't know anything, but as a layman watching this all unfold, first of all, the timing of it, right after these strikes on our bases, it was like, wow, was this really a coincidence? And then there were some questions about the Iranian government didn't want to hand over the black boxes. The Ukrainian embassy took down a statement ruling out. There were just some things that raised some questions before we even knew this latest information. But as a professional looking at this, were there questions in your mind as well, and what were they?
Immediately there were. I mean, because this is a very curious situation. Number one, the U.S. and Iran were just in that conflict just a matter of hours before. Then all of a sudden you have a plane that has gone down in Tehran. Then you were seeing these videos of what it looked like a plane that was on fire and crashing into the ground.
And on that piece, is that something that, because the experts I read said, even if you have an engine fire, you're not going to have a plane that's just in flames in the air like that.
You're not. And from other crashes that we've investigated, Value Jet and other crashes, TW800, those planes that were in the air, they were in the air for substantial, much more time than this. I mean, this had just taken off, and then all of a sudden it's in a complete ball of fire. But yes, you're right. If it's going to take some time for that engine or fuselage to burn through and to be that kind of bright, so there has to be some kind of incendiary event that has made it explode like that. But one of the other things that was a great concern to me and raised questions in my mind immediately was when they said the Iranians were coming out saying that it crashed because of a technical error. Well, how do you know that? I mean, how would anyone know that?
Right.
And that was very suspicious.
And the NTSB takes like a year and a half before they announce something. I believe we have some images of the black box actually, and they were saying that the black box is actually not going to be turned over to either. So could you set the record straight on this? Who is the black box normally go to after a crash like this?
The black boxes usually go to the investigative agency within the country. According to ICAO rules, the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is the aviation branch of the UN, according to that treaty, the country where the accident occurred is the lead country for the investigation. That country would be doing the black box study. If they do not have the technology available to them, then they would assign the box to another country for them to read it out. It doesn't go to the company. Sometimes it can, but in extreme circumstances. But in most most situations, it would be going to someone like the NTSB here in the U.S. or the Transportation Safety Board in Canada. Now, under these very unusual circumstances between the U.S. and Iran right at the moment, there's not a lot of
the greatest of friends.
Right. There's not a lot of incentive to really cooperate with us, and so it's going to be interesting to see. My prediction is they will probably be sent eventually to some country,
maybe Canada,
either Canada or in Europe, possibly Russia, but another ICAO member country.
What do we know of the Iranians' capabilities to analyze what would be on these black boxes?
Well, because of our limited diplomatic relations in the last few years, our information on that is limited.
Yeah, and also, I mean, why would you want to investigate a crash that you're allegedly responsible for? You could probably want to cover that up. So, I mean, from that perspective, I mean, can we even trust any of the information that comes out of this? And when the Pentagon says that they have, high levels of analysis showing this, how would they know? Through satellite imagery? I mean, is it stuff that could just
it's satellite imagery and spy satellites that they have that are watching these kinds of situations. They're picking up these satellites are very, very, very sophisticated now. The main thing that we've got to do is get these investigators in on the ground quickly and as quick as possible. With Iran going in with bulldozers and clearing the sites and so forth, this is really inappropriate, and this needs to be done quickly, because if this evidence is tampered with or contaminated in some kind of way, we're not going to be able to get the kind of evidence that we would need. But this is a human tragedy.
Oh, it's horrible.
And 176 people.
176 people, children, newlyweds. There's really a human tragedy here, and we owe it to those who have been lost and their loved ones and friends to do this correctly.
And based on what we know publicly, do you see any other plausible explanation than anti-aircraft missile?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we want to get in there and see. I mean, this is a lot of people have run with the speculation. Yeah. Oh, this thing was shot down. Well, let's get in there and let's get hard evidence and prove this.
What else could be plausible? What else would you evaluate?
It could be an incendiary device that was placed on the plane, a bomb.
Terrorism, basically.
Terrorism. It could have been a catastrophic engine failure if it was, but it would have to be a really interesting situation.
Series of cascading events.
Cascading events, and usually in these accidents, what we have found that it is a cascading of events. That the accident occurred long before, there was a broken part, and then it cascades to that point where it actually crashes. But it could have been an uncontained engine failure, where the engine blew apart and then pierced the wing, causing the plane to ignite and so forth. So those are all still possibilities, but we've got to get in there, get the evidence, and make sure that we do this correctly.
Yeah. Got it. Jamie, thank you so much. Great to have you.
Really
Thank you.
Coming up, Team Rising shares their thoughts on all things polling. That's next.